The adaptation plan came about as a result of work done by Epica, and Epica brought together a really great cross-section of people across Eyre Peninsula. We had people who had expertise in conservation, farming, fisheries, wild fisheries, lots of different angles, local government, infrastructure.
And that plan hinged on targeted engagement. So we had 30, 35, 38 people in the room, but they were people that we asked, or that had multiple hats. They were people that we asked to commit time to this project and see it through over an 8-month period.
Over the 3 workshops, we introduced a new methodology called adaptation pathways, and it's the first time it's actually been brought from a highly complex theoretical process down onto the ground and have people of the Eyre Peninsula fill in what they see as their adaptation options.
So that when the whole process was finished, those people would go back wearing their various hats and have some influence in their community with it.
And it really recognised that the communities are linked, our economies are linked right throughout, and our natural environment's linked as well. So we really had to look at that next step of how we tied a lot of that together.
We invited stakeholders, like senior government people from Department of Health, SES, DCSI, working together to develop some practicals. And we also invite some practical supporters like Migrant Resource Centre, Migrant Health Service to working together with us. And also we invited the community leaders and local council people to working together.
So we took the view that we really couldn't say the words vulnerability and our community wouldn't accept that sort of language. And so because every farmer on the Eyre Peninsula believes that they're really innovative and they're smart and they're intelligent and they're leaders, and they are. And so therefore they wouldn't see themselves as being vulnerable to climate change or climate variability. They would see themselves as in some way, shape or form always being able to be adaptive. So we had to ensure that we could speak in the right language with them, or they just wouldn't talk to us.
We don't necessarily talk about climate change. We don't necessarily talk about, 20 centimetres, 50 centimetres of sea level rise, because people sort of look at you and go, well, there's, tidal movements every day. So the same thing to some degree with global temperatures, say 2 degrees increase in global temperatures, and they look at you blankly and say, well, it was 24 yesterday and it's 36 today. So it's outside of perhaps that scientific realm, it's hard for people to kind of get their heads around what it actually means for them.
We knew water was a very, very important part of climate change adaptation. So our adaptation project was split into 2. We commissioned an adaptation plan in general, and then a water-specific adaptation plan to make sure that this was addressed in some detail rather than with a broad brush.
A really good thing about this project is that the three councils initially came together really of their own accord, did all the hard work of getting the funding and doing the research, and have really stuck at it. I think persistence is a really important thing, because as we've gone through this process, there's been political cycles going around at federal, state and other levels, and all sorts of things have changed nationally, internationally, both economically and in terms of climate change. So it's really important that we've just sort of, we just knew where we wanted to go and just kept going.
We're at a really exciting stage now. We're at the implementation stage, so we've just finished our regional adaptation plan. It's been adopted by each of the 4 partner councils that are involved in Resilience South. But the Resilience South regional adaptation plan is more than just about the councils. It's got responsibilities in it for everybody in the region, and that's the state government, the Australian government, business and industry, and the community at large.
We're needing to work very closely with the state government agencies. The state government actually own a lot of the land as Crown land throughout this region. And we're also needing to work with private sector such as Flinders Ports and the major ports and infrastructure managers and providers as well.
We need to help people understand that it's really common sense and it's in their own best interests, and that there's, that we're not out there trying to sell them something they don't need or don't want.
We've just started working like this in the outback with the mining supply chain. Like if one part of the supply chain was really hit hard by high winds or something like that, then it affected all the way down the chain, and people were suddenly going, oh, well, I can't afford to be out of action for 3 weeks. Once you started talking about real money and productivity and profitability, that made a big difference.
If I look at just for our farm, certainly that long-term outcome, considering that we need to, modify soil further or take no-till a step further or try new varieties, continue to seek something that will cope better with increased frosts or with increased temperatures at flowering time. So all of those things are, long-term benefits of the plan.
That part of the plan is being worked on by the fishing industry at the moment. They're now using parts of the plan, because they're involved in it, to say where they will actually conduct their own research. And what they've done is that the thinking behind the plan has confirmed their thinking that the tuna fish are moving, and therefore it's actually not such a bad thing at the moment, because instead of going out to sea for 3 days to find them, or 4 days, they only have to go out a little bit, so they're saving on diesel.
So after 2009 heat waves, we have working together with SA Health to develop a threshold temperature detection. So that is threshold provide evidence for the SCS and SA Health, DCSI, to working together to issue an early warning system.
With the mining people, I got the distinct impression that they were taking very seriously right now 2 main impacts, which one surprised me. One is heat, and we can imagine heat stress on lots of different things. But the other one was extreme events, particularly flooding and wind, because I hadn't actually taken that into consideration, in that a flooding event wipes out not only exploration and the mining site's productivity, but also the roads and the transport and the port and the shipping. So they're taking those 2 very, very seriously, and they're not waiting for government policy platforms to call it climate change. They're actually looking at how they adapt to it now.
We've got the methodology. We've had some successes in developing it and improving it. We actually need to get that to the adoption stage at the ground level. Because of resource constraints, I can't see that happening in 10 minutes. But nevertheless, it can be part of business as usual, for example, of an NRM board or a regional development board, and certainly for local government in its risk management space. So we can start having wins in those spaces. Over time, people will start to understand they need to reprioritise resources, and we will see an increased movement of resources into the space.